Hey everyone, I'm back from holidays. I got my hair cut. This is the shortest it has ever been, and right now I'm really loving it. And finally, after a very long wait, I today would like to talk about the 3 Chanel bags I own. So I do own some classic modern styles such as your double flap in lambskin and gold hardware, but I personally just have a really soft spot for vintage Chanel bags. So that's where I've got this single flap in caviar gold hardware, and I've got this backpack with again gold hardware because I adore it, and lambskin, so you get a better sense of how lambskin ages in this bag. So both my vintage bags are from the 90s, and as you know, I really like to keep my videos structured. So today I'm going to cover 5 topics. They are a quick background about the brand, the main design features in the Chanel bags, especially if we look at the double flap. Why are some Chanel bags so expensive and so famous? My purchase story, how I bought all these bags, and finally my verdict on whether I think it's worth the price tag. And as always, before we get started, a really big thank you to my subscribers for watching, for your feedback, for your support. So yeah, let's jump right into this. Chanel as a French brand is now 108 years old, and last year, according to Wikipedia, it recorded a net worth of US $1.3 billion. Coco Chanel's real name is Gabrielle, and she actually got the nickname Coco when she was working as a singer in a club. She has a very humble backstory where she grew up in an orphanage and apparently learned to sew from the nuns. So as a young attractive lady, Coco Chanel became mistress to a very wealthy man who funded her first business, which was a hat making store, and she became quite popular with the French sporting and hunting elite. So in the 1920s, as she expanded hat making into a general women's clothing design store, she created a lot of her iconic Chanel pieces. These include the whole groundbreaking concept of a little black dress, along with a Chanel suit, which was a bold, feminine suit for women, alongside the Chanel No. 5 perfume, which originally you couldn't buy. It was purely given as a gift to her clients. So she became quite popular because in an era where corsets was the norm, which was uncomfortable, heavy, burdensome, Chanel focused on simple, lightweight fabrics which were easy to maintain, easy to wear, flat-chested, simple but elegant. A lot of the iconic design features of the Chanel branding were her reinventions of traditionally masculine elements. So if we look at her bags, there's a number of features, the first one being the slender shoulder straps. Now, in her time, women only carried bags by hand, and so this whole concept was inspired when she noticed the thin straps on soldiers' bags preparing for the World War. The other factor is, of course, that beautiful quilted leather, and apparently she got this idea from the quilted cardigans of stable hands. Now, I don't own the Chanel boy bag, but again, it was mentioned that the boy bag was inspired from one of her early bag designs, which she based off the cartridge bags of male hunters. So that's how that bag in particular has a very bold, sporty, masculine look. Chanel's iconic long pearl necklaces came about post-World War II. Although she designed her first bag in 1929, it was in February 1955, or more than 30 years later, that the iconic Chanel bag with quilted leather was introduced on the market. And at that point in time, it finally became acceptable that women of high social status could wear their bags on their shoulders. If we compare Chanel's 2 most iconic bags, which is the 2.55 series originating in the 1950s to the classic flat bag coming from the 1980s, you can see that the main differences are the lock type. It's also the strap, where you've got the Mademoiselle chain versus the leather woven chain, which apparently was inspired by the key holders of nuns in her orphanage. Note that 2.55s are always double flap, while some classic flaps are made as single flaps, although they are now discontinued. This can get quite confusing. In February 2005, the reissue 2.55 bag, which is identical to the original 1955 bag, was launched to celebrate the 50th anniversary. Although 2.55 bags are now part of the permanent Chanel collection, the particular reissue series is now discontinued because it was only meant to mark a milestone in the company's history. What can be very confusing when you read about this on the internet is that some sources will use the term reissue 2.55 to refer to all new 2.55 bags, and some other sources will use 2.55 as an umbrella term. So they might even classify the classic flap as a 2.55 even though it's actually a completely separate model and a separate range. So I hope that clarifies this a little bit for you. What you might not know about Chanel is that she designed the air hostess uniforms for Olympic Airways, which was a luxury airline at the time, and these uniforms were used for about 3 years. Don't you think that bow is so cute? Coco Chanel passed away in 1971, so a lot of what we know of Chanel today is under the creative direction of Karl Lagerfeld, who previously worked with Chloe and continues to work with Fendi. Chanel bags apparently take 15 hours to make, and there are 5 artisan workshops located only in northern towns of Paris. They are handcrafted but not hand stitched because seamstresses will use light machinery to put the bags together. Note this is different from heavy machinery, which cuts patterns and assembles in mass quantities, which doesn't need any human skill and expertise, and that's not the situation here with Chanel bags. I feel that with all 3 of my Chanel bags, they can mainly be summarized under 4 categories of design features: leather, hardware, details, and size. There are a number of options available with Chanel leather. However, the pillars that you will mostly be selecting from would be lambskin and caviar, which is a type of grained calf skin. Quilted calfskin, which is smooth with a fine grain, is popular on the boy bag, and aged calfskin is paired often with the reissue 2.55 bags, so you get the vintage look on a new bag. I've also seen some really interesting bags which are metallic calfskin or patent, although I personally feel like the glossiness conflicts with sort of the timeless class of the bag. Back when I was researching for my bag purchases, I found leather choice one of the hardest decisions to make. I really wanted lambskin because it is the softest leather on the market and it is so Chanel, but I know that I am OCD about pristine bag condition, and because I was determined to buy the bag pre-loved, and I've heard all these articles about how easy it is to damage lambskin, I was really stuck on the decision. I'm so glad that in the end I had the courage and leap of faith just to purchase this bag as lambskin, because I definitely don't regret that decision. The leather is even more luxurious and supple than I expected, and it's not as fragile as what I feared. So if you have never been in store and actually touched lambskin, the way I would describe it is that if you were to poke your cheek in its softest part, the way your skin sticks slightly to your finger, the softness of it, the fact that it's completely not dry and has this sort of buttery feel, that's what lambskin would feel like. I was reading online that if you have long nails, you're going to scratch this bag. I found that that's not really true. You know when you freshly cut your nails and it's really jaggedy and awkward and sharp? That will definitely cut the leather. But otherwise, as long as your nails are blunt, no matter what length they are, that's not an issue here. I have found though that since lambskin is such a soft leather, it is very easy to dent. So That's why I personally only ever carry it under my shoulder so I can keep it protected. It's one of those leather types where if I was to accidentally reverse into a sharp corner or have something else protrude into it, that could mark the bag. It's very important that you know how to store your lambskin bag correctly, because the weight of these heavy chains could very easily deflate the lambskin as well. In general, I would say that lambskin is not your everyday use bag. It is for your occasional use, and in that case you will be absolutely fine with the leather. Lambskin has a natural sheen, and this tends to increase with age. So if I show you my lambskin vintage backpack, which is now almost 20 years old, you can see that it's still in fantastic condition and it does not look at all like it's aged. It also has no major scruff marks. Just beware that lambskin is not a type of leather that you can put down on a surface and sort of push your bag around roughly. This is also because no Chanel bags to my knowledge have feet, which is a little bit frustrating. But it is a type of leather which does need to be treated with care, although it is not so fragile that you can't just take it out for your normal day use. On the other hand, caviar is a much more durable leather. Previously when I was talking about the whole sharp, awkward nail scenario, I haven't tried it personally, but I don't think it will be such a deal breaker on this type of leather. Especially if you opt for a larger bag, I highly recommend you get caviar. This is the type of bag where if I need to put it on the floor, if I accidentally reverse it into a wall or a corner, or someone bumps into it, I'm not really worried. I know that unless someone puts a sharp rock against it, it really won't show those signs of accidental use or damage. So if you're looking for a bag to use every day, for example for work, definitely opt for caviar, don't get lambskin. However, just to make your decision a little bit harder, because most likely you're like me and you bounce back and forth between the two, if you love the look of that puffy Chanel quilted leather, caviar holds it much better. So this bag is almost 20 years old and you can see how well defined that quilting still is. Now my lambskin is now almost 5 years, so you can see it's still puffy. However, this is probably half the level of puffiness which it originally is when you purchase it. And it will naturally decrease with time. However, that process can intensify or escalate if you don't store it correctly and depending on how much you use it. So as an example, when I was on my honeymoon last year, I asked my mom to sort of babysit all of my bags at her home, and she didn't follow my storage instructions. So this has actually deflated a bit more compared to what it was like last year. Bit sad, but that's okay. I am really curious to know whether this bag was originally puffy or not puffy, because lambskin can be either. So if anyone owns this bag from day one and they purchased it not pre-loved, please let me know if it always looked like this or it was a bit more raised. Just to clarify, when I say that lambskin can be puffy or not, you can see in the classic flaps, it's completely flat on the sides and on the bottom compared to being raised along the front and the back. The last factor to keep in mind selecting between these two leather types is that lambskin is lighter than caviar. So a lot of designer bags are heavy just because of the quality of the materials, and Chanel's no different. The weight of these chains is really quite intense. So if you don't like a heavy bag, then lambskin's going to help you a little bit more than getting the heavier caviar. Chanel leather can come in a variety of colors, although I personally just loved black. To me, black with that strong gold hardware is such a classic, timeless, sophisticated look. So it was a very easy decision for me. With the interior, seasonal items tend to be cheaper, and so as a result, this is reflected in them using a non-leather interior lining, such as silk, fabric, or even vinyl. One of my favorite seasonal items is the Westminster flat bag from the Spring-Summer 2015 collection, which I will probably never add to my own collection, but you know, you can always fantasize. The lambskin classic flap is always lined in burgundy lambskin leather, and apparently this color was chosen by Coco Chanel because it was the tone of the uniforms at her orphanage. Here the lambskin is completely flat, like what you see at the sides and bottom of the bag, but it's still luxuriously soft and slightly sticky to your fingers. I love running my fingers across it, but I do get super scared at the idea of my keys scratching the leather. Don't be crazy like me if you can help it. And finally, vintage Chanel bags are more commonly lined in black leather, as you can see with my backpack and also my single flap. Like how you can get a fabric interior, you can also get a fabric exterior, such as Chanel's iconic tweed, which is a type of woolen fabric. I'm a bit nervous about the durability of the material, but otherwise I think it's a fantastic iconic Chanel look and I wouldn't mind adding it to my collection one day. You can also get a jersey. This bag is a bit unusual because it combines the classic flap turn lock with the 2.55 chain, which I don't often see, or velvet fabrics, so there's plenty of options. Chanel hardware can be as diverse as shiny or matte black, ruthenium, which is a distressed metal darker than silver, but most likely you will be debating between choosing gold or silver hardware. I would like to clarify here that any bag made after early 2009 is only gold tone hardware. It is no longer the 24 karat gold that used to be used in the vintage bags. So in both of my vintage bags, they're the 24 carats, and you know this because of the unique stamp which is placed on the turn locks. No matter whether it's silver or gold tone or 24 karat gold, the hardware is always solid brass. So as I mentioned earlier, these chains have real weight and they will make your bag quite heavy, so keep that in mind. As an example of this, I have been on outings before where I've worn a strapless or spaghetti strap dress and I've got my Chanel bag directly on my skin, and it's a bit embarrassing because when I remove the bag, you know, half an hour later, 40 minutes later, I've actually got the chains imprinted into my skin because of the weight, and that doesn't look very attractive, especially when you're out at a nice restaurant, to have that tattooed into you. Many avid Chanel collectors are sad that the company no longer provides 24 karat gold hardware, especially as the bag prices continue to double or quadruple. So really, what are you paying for? But 24 karat gold was actually harder to maintain. It is, as a softer metal, it scratches more easily, and also Chanel's care booklet when you purchase the bag states that it does react to sea air and the acidity, the natural acidity in your skin, so it can easily and naturally over time wear away. In terms of choosing between gold or silver tone hardware, a lot of people say opt for the type of jewelry that you normally wear. So for me personally, I only wear silver jewelry. The weirdest thing here is that I completely contradict that logic because I have fallen in love with the whole look of gold hardware, and I've selected that for all of my bags, where especially with black leather, it just looks sharp and formal and crisp. I think also the other factor to keep in mind is your wardrobe and how you like to style yourself. So with my wardrobe, I like to keep it rather simple and I want to look effortless and natural in my clothing style. So as a result, my handbag for me is always a statement piece. And so I think that's the reason why for my handbags, I've gone for the very bold gold, not for the more gentle, more natural silver, which especially if you want to use the bag during the day or you want to use it for more casual activities like just hitting the shops briefly, silver would be a better match. Silver can be more suitable for those casual activities, while gold is really reserved for your formal evening event. As I've mentioned earlier, both of my vintage bags are from the 1990s, so that was after Karl Lagerfeld introduced the concept of the interlocking CC turn lock. And so none of my vintage bags have the Mademoiselle turn lock. I don't mind this at all, as I absolutely adore the CCs, and I love especially how on my single jumbo flap, the shape of the central button is pointed at the end, so it makes it more dramatic. The chains on all three of my bags are the leather woven style, except in 3 different sizes. The single flap and double flap are exactly the same design, while the backpack is different. It's shorter and broader. When my husband and I were house hunting and we were looking at auctions every Saturday, I had this bag with me. It was half full and I carried it around for about 4 hours. And by the end of it, I had actually gotten shoulder pains because of how heavy these chunky straps are. Starting with my vintage backpack, it has one small external pocket, which is the perfect size for a compact mirror or a few cards or your lipstick. For the longest time, I could not decide if this bag was ugly or cute. I generally like my bags to be well structured with strong, clean lines and a simple focus. So this slouched backpack with the pocket and the double CC was a really messy contradiction to my normal taste. I have to blame it all on Ariana Grande, who always wore this bag, and the more I saw it, the more I fell in love with its compact cuteness. My vintage jumbo single flap is very me and completely my tastes. I love the gigantic CCs, which are really bold, and I love that I got it in vertical quilting instead of the classic diamond quilting, because otherwise I just feel like it's a blown up version of my double flap. Now it has its own distinct look, which is more prim and slightly more masculine. It has 2 pockets internally, one which is zipped with the CC logo pull tag, which is well suited for your documents. There is one external pocket. I have to admit though, as much as I adore this bag, I actually use it very, very rarely. The chains are heavy, it's too precious to use as a daily work bag, it's too large to use as an evening bag, so the only other day activities I do are grocery shop and personal errands like visiting the post office, where again this bag just feels too large and too formal to bring with me. So at this rate, it is going to remain pristine for a very long time. Finally, we have the super famous double flap bag. Apparently Chanel designed the external flap for holding money. I use it for frequently used cards like my train pass, so I don't have to pull that out of my wallet every time. On the underside of the flap is a zipped pocket, which you will never use. It's super awkward trying to open it on the go upside down. It's tiny, so it barely holds anything. Although the story is that it was designed to hold Chanel's love letters during her affair, so that's probably why it's so obscure and difficult to reach. Inside are 3 pockets. 2 are perfectly sized for your cards, compact mirror, receipts, and the central one holds your lipstick snugly. It's such a feminine touch to have a pocket sized perfectly for your lipstick. Burgundy interior enclosure, as you can see here, which apparently was because Chanel believed the contents of a lady's purse should always remain hidden and private. It's a real struggle to try and pin the burgundy lining down and clip it. I personally feel like I'm manhandling my bag, and I feel really bad about squishing the leather like that to try and get it closed. So truthfully, I think you will never ever pin that. You will always keep it open. At some point in the future, I'm going to do a dedicated video comparing what I can fit in each of my bags, but I can honestly say that the double flap does not hold very much, and this is because of the amount of space that the beautiful but very useless burgundy lining takes up. Looking at size, the vintage backpack does not come in any other sizes, and it's probably because of the fact that it's so petite that makes it so adorable. It can fit your essentials such as your huge phone, your wallet, a light cardigan, a small water bottle, a small snack. So it really is suitable for all your day trip essentials. The vintage jumbo single flap actually comes in one other size, which I personally feel like is a much better size for all those daily mundane errands I was talking about. This bag already can fit every above and beyond what I need. I can put my umbrella in here, a full-size water bottle, a jacket, and as I've mentioned, when it's full, it is way too heavy. So also for someone my size, I'm 1.6 meters, which is 5 foot 3 inches, I believe. This is sort of the maximum size that would look suitable on my frame. If I were to go above this, it would just look disproportionate. So onto the classic flat bag, which actually comes in 6 different sizes. I don't know if it's just me, but I found it very confusing for a long time that the size medium is often referred to as medium/large, or some places even call it large. Now, the size small and medium are actually very similar. The difference is only 2 centimeters in the height and the width. If you're often confused by that, the easiest way to tell is the number of full triangles across the width of your bag. So small will be 7 full triangles and medium will be 8. If you like to carry a bit more, I would not go smaller than this size. I already struggle to fit any more than my wallet, phone, keys, lipstick. That's really it. So even though it looks somewhat similar in size, this backpack is so much more versatile in terms of what I can squeeze into it. Chanel's strong reputation and high costs can be attributed to its quality, its hand craftsmanship, its artificial price inflation. Starting with quality, vintage Chanel is celebrated among collectors for how reliable it is and how well the materials age. So you can see very easily from my 2 vintage bags that even at almost 20 years old, the leather is shiny and healthy, the hardware is brilliant and works perfectly. There are no seams which are falling apart on any of my bags. Generally, I've searched forums and I have not found a single complaint about the original condition of a vintage bag. On the other hand, it's very easy to find comments about the poor quality of modern day Chanel items and how they've been cutting costs. I am fortunate to not have experienced it with this bag, but very easily you will find stories about the seams coming apart on a bag that's only 2 weeks old, or getting a brand new bag except the hardware is lopsided. It all sounds like a nightmare when you pay so much for these bags. The only extent to which I have experienced this is that I have a pair of vintage Chanel earrings alongside a very new collection of Chanel earrings, and it's clear with the new item the quality is very poor, and I will address that in my later jewelry review. Although not hand-stitched, Chanel bags are still time-intensive because it requires a skilled artisan to closely monitor the use of light machinery. Some items, such as the turn lock, are entirely assembled by hand. Chanel does not limit stock. However, it has been reported that most European Chanel outlets will limit the number of items that you can purchase on your passport. It is generally 1 bag per 2-month period. You can choose to exceed that, however you won't be able to claim the tax back on your 2nd or 3rd bag purchase. However, Chanel's most effective strategy in building the image of itself as a highly desired and exclusive luxury brand is its annual price hikes. 2 or 3 times a year, Chanel will increase the price of its double flat bags by several $100s to ensure that it is always highly sought after but very hard to attain. This bag is now almost $7,000 Australian dollars, while when I first started hunting for it 3 years ago, it was just over 5,000. Starting with my vintage Chanel backpack, I had been watching this on the market for over 2 years. In that whole period, I kept fluctuating between whether this bag's ugly or cute, do I want it, do I not want it, and I finally decided, yes, I'm going to get it from a reputable reseller based in Japan. If you've ever searched up vintage Chanel bags, you will notice that 95% of them, of the sellers, are all Japanese. To avoid paying an extreme import tax, because I'm based in Australia and it's quite hefty, my plan was to buy the bag online, then ask the seller to hold it until my friend or family was holidaying in Japan, and then they could mail the bag to that particular hotel, from which my friend or family could carry the bag through customs through Australia, and I wouldn't have to pay the customs fee. However, just before I was going to go ahead and do this, on the app Carousel, I bumped into a girl who was selling this bag. It turns out she had purchased it from Japan less than a year earlier, but unfortunately she had to let it go because of urgent financial reasons. And as you know, this is my mantra. I only buy from people who are desperate to sell, because that gives me the competitive edge in terms of negotiating. And because I offered her cash on the spot, I was able to get this bag for $2,200, which is almost half the price that I would have paid buying it from Japan. And it's still a mint condition bag. The only problem I faced was that it had increased creasing along the bottom, and that was because she did not store the bag correctly. She just left it unstuffed when she wasn't using it, which is never what you should do. So I'm very, very happy with the bargain I got, and how patience always pays off, and you should always watch the market. With my mint condition vintage jumbo, I also found it from an Australian eBay seller. Now, she caught my eye because I love this bag, but she actually had no previous eBay history. She had no reviews. She had only joined just to sell this bag. And usually I would never buy from someone like that, but in this case I made an exception. The first reason is that there are no counterfeits for this bag. Counterfeits only exist for bags which are in high demand, well known, and therefore it's worth producing hundreds or thousands of fake copies. In this case, because no one knows this bag, nobody wants this bag, there's not going to be counterfeits. Secondly, it came with all the original packaging and the sale receipt, so I knew exactly where she got it and where she got it authenticated. Now, I offered her $2,500, which was far below what she wanted. She wanted $4,500. However, I knew she would give in over time. And the reason for that was because as an Australian and not an American seller, she has far less exposure. With no positive sales history, very few people would be comfortable taking that risk. And lastly, I knew she needed the money. She got the bag from Japan as a gift for her 30th birthday. And after having kids, she just realized she was never going to use it, and it was worth her getting her money back instead. So what I did is I gave her my offer and I said, these are my contact details, let me know if you change your mind. 6 months later, she messaged me and said that yes, she was willing to sell. She wanted still a higher price, and the way I managed to negotiate that was I had a YSL Artie ring. I actually had two of them. I bought my first one in the wrong size, and I offered to give that to her alongside my $2,500 cash, which she accepted because she actually wanted the ring, which was a nice little trade that we had. My last bag, the famous Chanel double flap, I also got for a bargain price of $2,200, because you can probably tell I do not like paying full price for my bags. I have been watching this on the market for a very, very long time, and I purchased it from an experienced seller with a lot of positive feedback. The reason why I was able to get it for so cheap was that he was actually the husband of the woman who originally owned this, and he was basically told to just get rid of it. They were not interested in waiting 2 years to get this, to sell this bag at its highest price. As long as it was reasonable, they were happy to part with it. It came with all its original packaging. He also offered refunds if I was not satisfied. So the moment I received it, I got it authenticated and I was confident in keeping it. The other way I was able to get the bag for so cheap was that we agreed to settle the payment outside of eBay through PayPal directly. That meant he saved himself eBay fees, and I was able to still get the buyer's protection that I wanted. Be prepared to always act quickly once you understand the market and when you identify a bargain. For example, within the 3 days that he listed this bag, 17 people were watching. And so instead of wasting any time, I went straight to getting his mobile number and bargaining and holding his interest there to ensure that I had priority over the other buyers. So ultimately, do I think Chanel bags are worth the price tag? If you have been fantasizing about Chanel for a very long time, I think you will not regret the purchase, especially if you opt for a smaller bag, which is lighter and it's more versatile for day and night. This is especially if you get the gentler, more casual silver tone hardware instead of the gold. I love how when you wear Chanel, it can transform the most simple, basic outfit you have into something far more elegant. And also, if you opt for vintage Chanel, it gives the impression that you have a really unique style and unique identity because you don't look like the next lady carrying a double flap. Of course, if you're after instant recognition and glamour, then classic items like the double flap is what you should add to your wardrobe. If you're worried about spending a lot of money and regretting your purchase, then opt for a classic bag. They are always highly sought after, so you will have a much easier time reselling it. Vintage bags have such a broad aesthetic that you have a smaller number of people who you are appealing to with each model, so narrowing the number of buyers who would be interested. Of course, your best strategy for reselling is always time. Never sell in a rush because the buyer will take advantage of your desperation. Always sell with the expectation that it will take a year or 2 years or even more than that. If you want to buy vintage for a good price, try to stay ahead of the trends and buy your bag before it's revived in fashion tastes. My vintage backpack is a perfect example of this. When I first came across it 3 years ago, it was $2,000 on average, and I had an opportunity to buy it for $1,700. I didn't take it because back then I still thought this bag was ugly. Then in more recent years, Ariana Grande has been sporting it continuously, and the whole trend of backpacks has blown up in women's fashion. So as a result, this bag is now almost triple its original price. If you're interested in Chanel because of the culture of repair, where you can pass your bags down to your daughter and pass it down to your granddaughter, then prepare to be disappointed. In preparing for this video, I spoke to some Chanel shop assistants, and it came to my attention that they no longer are as willing to repair vintage bags. So Chanel have a very strict policy to ensure their bags look identical to the original design. When it comes to the whole issue that 24 karat gold plating is no longer available, it means that they will not repair your hardware, they will completely replace it. It will take 6 to 12 months for your vintage bag to get sent to Paris, and for the team there to investigate whether they have the matching piece to replace your hardware with. This even includes manufacturing the piece from scratch if they do not have it in stock. However, it's been quite a common result that even after a 12-month wait, they do not have the matching hardware in stock. They cannot manufacture it from scratch either. So the result is that they will do nothing to replace or fix your hardware. On the other hand, if we only focus on leather, then it will only take 6 to 8 weeks for you to have your bag repaired. And this is because it can be handled locally in your own country. To clarify, these bags are only sent to Paris when new parts are required. So generally, the moment you drop your bag off at the Chanel boutique, the after sales department can return a quote to you. Expect approximately $500 for an exterior only clean, although the exact figure depends on the type of leather, type of fabric if we're not talking about leather, the size of your bag, and also of course the condition it's in. So it's very important to remember when buying luxury bags that it not only demands a lot of capital up front, but will also require capital long term for you to maintain it in its best condition. Finally, in terms of deciding whether a Chanel bag is right for you, think about your lifestyle. I like to keep my hands and my arms free, so the fact that Chanel always has shoulder straps is a factor which suits my lifestyle perfectly more than any other brand. One thing that does bug me though is that these bags do not come with feet. I go through periods where I lose my little portable bag holder, which means I have to put my bag on a chair or even the floor if there's no chair available, and that's really heartbreaking for me. So I'm really hoping today's video was interesting. I'm hoping it gave you new information which will be useful to you in your own decision making. Again, it's a little bit long, so sorry about that, and thank you for your patience. I'm going to pause my videos about my bag collection because I'm thinking of adding one more bag. For my next video, I am thinking about taking you through my jewelry collection. So I do own a whole range of statement jewelry from different brands such as Chanel, Dior, YSL. So because there's so many miscellaneous items here, follow me on Instagram to see little snapshots of what goodies I do have. Yeah, see you next month.